As we start Chapter 5, in Lesson 1 we're going to be dealing with exponents. And what I did is I copied this from our textbook, which goes over the basic rules. So a little background, and take any notes that you want. So when we see something like this, a to the nth power, and we did a little bit of this in Chapter 1, this is your base, and the n stands for the number of times you will take the base and multiply it by itself. And the n is the exponent. And this exponent only applies to what is immediately to the left of it. So as we look at example here, we have 3 to the second, which is 3 times 3, which equals 9. Now here we have in parentheses, because of the parentheses, our base is a negative 5, and the negative is included. So 3 negatives give you a negative, and then 5 to the third is 125. Now when we see something in a parenthesis, which is a fraction, the exponent applies to both the numerator and the denominator. So you get this. Now the basic rule is if your bases are the same and you're going to multiply them, then what we do is we just add the exponents. And that's what this rule is. It's called the product rule. Now the power rule is when we have an exponent and its base inside a parenthesis, and then outside the parenthesis we're raising it to a power. Here we multiply. So many students get these two confused. When do you add them? When do you multiply? And here are the rules. Now again, if you have a multiplication inside a parenthesis of letters, there's like a 1 by each one of these, then when you expand that, it would be that exponent that's out there by each of the factors inside the parenthesis. And that applies if it's in a fraction as well. Now a quick review of the quotient rule, and quotient, recall, is in a sense a fraction, and division. We take the smaller number, exponent, move it across the division bar, and it changes its sign, and we subtract. Because if we're multiplying, we're adding. When we divide, we will subtract. And then the zero exponent rule, anything to the 0 power is 1. And we can see it here. If we have a to the third divided by a to the third, the rule is we bring up the exponent. This becomes a negative 3. So we then have a to the 0 power. But what is a to the third divided by a to the third? We said anything divided by itself is 1. So anything to the 0 power is 1. Now there are times when we have to be careful of the sign. We'll be going over some of those in our lesson. So based on what we've just said, do row A, and then I'll put the answers up and go over them with you. So how'd you do? 3 to the third power is 27. Now because the base is a negative 7, it's negative times negative, makes it a positive 49. Now here you have to be careful. the base is just the 6, not the negative 6. So we square the 6, get 36, and then we apply the negative sign. Here, again, a good technique is use parentheses to put in your variable, a -5 that we will square. This then becomes a positive 25 times a -4 gives you a -100. Now, here we're going to multiply the numbers, but add the exponents, as long as they're the same base. We're going to be careful of the signs. And a good thing here, negative times negative, this will end up being a positive. This is a negative times a negative will also end up being a positive. So then you don't have to worry about the signs anymore. All right, so take a moment and do this. These are straightforward. If you have a question, be sure to ask. Now here we're using the power rule, where we're raising a power to a power outside the parenthesis. We're going to be multiplying here. And remember, this is going to be 5 to the 3rd power. All right, let's work on these. Well, it's nice to have some easy things here. Again, so long as you know the difference of when you add, when you multiply. When you're using the power rule, raising a power to a power, you multiply. I'll do this one with you. Now, because of the parenthesis, it's a -7 times -7, which gives you 49. And then we just multiply. A to the 6th, B to the 6th, and we're good there. Now here this will be A to the 7th, B to the 7th, over C to the 7th. Now again, when you're raising a negative to an even power, it's going to end up being positive. So 3 to the 4th power then is 81. Now there's a 1 by each of these, so it's to the 4th, y to the 4th, c to the 12th. Now it's 3 to the 2nd, which is 9, x to the 4th, y to the 8th. Now again, we have a -2 times -2 makes it a +4, c to the 6th. So again, pretty straightforward if you are following the rules. Now in the quotient rule, we're going to subtract the smaller exponent from the larger. So this gives us x to the 3rd. This will give us a -6 to the 2nd, which we can also simplify to 36. Now, before when we had this, there was no parenthesis, but now the negative is included in the base. So here we have x subtracting to the 4th and a y to the 1st. We don't write the 1. Now here we can take a 2 out of the top, and that would be 4. A 2 out of the 18 and get a 9. Now it'll be a to the 2nd as we subtract 1 from the 3. we're going to subtract 5 from the 8 and get b to the third, and it looks like a c to the first. Now in this next part, we're going to take a look at bases to the 0 power. And it's relatively easy, but could be a little tricky. So 8 to the 0, anything to the 0 we said is 1. A fraction in parentheses to the 0, that's 1. This expression, because of the parentheses to the 0, that's 1. Now here, x to the 0 is 1. 9 to the 0 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, because they asked us to simplify. All right, we're now going to do some mix practice. Now for this, a little tricky part here is if you look at c to the 0 here, this is just going to be a 1 here. So we can kind of forget about that. And then here it's going to be a negative raised to a third power. So this expression will be negative. Here we have negative times negative. This will be positive. And there's a couple of ways to do this. See what you do, and in fact see what you do with all of these, and then we'll have the answers posted shortly. We'll give you some class time to work on it. So going over these, 64, a to the 6th, b to the 4th. Now here we had to do this in 2 steps. We cubed the 3, negative 27, but notice we could subtract out some of our powers of x here, so that eventually we subtracted 3 from 6 and got x to the third, and we said it was going to be negative. Now below they have this incorrect, that was an error, and this is just straightforward. We got the correct sign. And here this is 12 to the 4th, which is there, a to the 4th, b to the 4th, 6 to the 2nd, a to the 4th, b to the 4th. Now these just cancel out. And if you put this in your calculator, 12 to the 4th divided by 36, this is what you get. Okay, so again, you've had a chance for some hands-on, and we'll move on.